You know, some people might say that I'm too hard on the MCU, or that I expect too much, or that I'm simply just an MCU hater. No matter the reason, it doesn't change the fact that 99.9% of the time, when I have a critique about this franchise, either an actor who works on an MCU project or a disgruntled VFX worker usually confirms all of my suspicions. But recently my validation is coming from Marvel Studios' head honcho himself, Kevin Feige. Let's discuss. Our content sucks. Our content sucks.
I watch so you don't have to.
You know, some people have told me that my Marvel intro is cringe, but I would respond to those people and say, I think Marvel has earned it. I have every right to alter their recognizable intro, because the content they are currently producing most certainly does suck.
That's right, it stinks!
But the question on a lot of people's minds is, why exactly does it suck? Especially after the MCU spent so many years atop the pop culture food chain. And yes, superhero fatigue definitely has something to do with it, but truthfully I think if Marvel was producing a better product, a lot more people would be inclined to stick around. Marvel Studios just hasn't given fans a reason to stay post-Endgame. Why? Perhaps they got complacent, they got lazy, or perhaps they took their very loyal fan base for granted.
Not up in here!
Not up in here!
Brand loyalty will only take you so far. Eventually, even the most loyal fan will notice a dip in quality. And every day that passes by that you continue to produce subpar content, you are slowly chipping away at the foundation of your once very successful IP. And the foundation to any successful IP is fandom, first and foremost.
That makes sense.
Now, I've long said that my personal biggest issue with the MCU is the very clear lack of creative freedom that goes into crafting their stories. They have a very formulaic, filmmaking by committee approach to making movies. And it typically shows in the final product, and that's just not interesting to me and a lot of other people. Especially when you take into consideration where movie ticket prices are currently, you need to give me a reason besides Easter eggs and cameos to support your movie. And for some time now, it seems like the MCU has been unable to do that.
Why are you the way that you are?
Now, it did take most of the general public a bit longer to catch on, but eventually they did, and now we are even seeing box office numbers start to diminish. I think Disney and Marvel Studios are very aware that they have a problem, and it seems like every other day that we are now hearing stories about how they plan to fix that problem and reignite interest in their brand. And that's going to be a lot easier said than done. It's very hard to catch lightning in a bottle twice.
Good luck. You're gonna need it.
But Kevin Feige reportedly thinks he has the answer to the current MCU problem. This story comes via The Direct that says, quote, Kevin Feige reportedly changing his strategy on MCU director hiring. Now, in typical mainstream media fashion, before they get real, before they start to talk about the real issues, they have to beat around the bush a little bit and give Marvel their flowers. This time for the supposed recent success stories as it pertains to Marvel Studios hiring unproven talent behind the camera.
We ain't found shit!
First, it points to the Russo Brothers, who were relatively unknown prior to their Marvel work. And as much as people like to heap praise on them for movies like Infinity War, I tend to believe that even they were a product of the MCU machine. The reality of the situation is that those movies were going to succeed no matter what because of the years of hype building up to them. And I can honestly say that I'm not all that impressed with anything that the Russo Brothers have done post-Marvel.
Not impressed.
So I guess what I'm saying is that I don't know how much of a success story they actually are. They definitely earned a career off their Marvel work, I can't dispute that. But my question is, how much of those movies was their work, and how much of it was Marvel was just not going to fail at that point in time? I would also argue that a lot of the pitfalls that plague current MCU stories were very present in some of the Russo Brothers movies, most notably Endgame.
So, whatever it is that you're offering, we're not into it. Don't care, couldn't care less.
So I do find it hard to believe that those films were 100% their vision. Then the article brings up the more recent misfire as it pertains to the MCU hiring process. When they hired Rick and Morty writer Jeff Loveless to pen this year's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. A movie that was a creative failure at almost every level. And the lack of interest in that movie from fans reflected that.
This is whack. I can't get jiggy with this shit.
So with all that being said, a new rumor from insider Jeff Snyder, while talking to the hot mic, Kevin Feige, quote, wants to hire more established talent behind the camera. Now, I would respond to that and say, why weren't you doing that in the first place? To be clear, I'm not against new creatives being given an opportunity to do something fresh with these stories and characters. But let's be honest with ourselves, and this isn't mentioned in the article at all, and I'm not surprised that it isn't. Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios hires people like this not for their ideas, but because they are easier to control than more established talent. Marvel wants someone who's going to fall in line and do things the way that they want them done. They want someone they can force to work within their pre-established creative guidelines. When you are a member of a corporation like that, or any corporation for that matter, you are very rarely ever allowed to think outside the box, or to challenge the status quo.
Anybody care about what I want?
I do.
Shut up. Get out.
Because in Marvel's eyes, they've done things their way for so long, and achieved a lot of success doing so why would they ever want to change their approach? They would rather create a stale product that they think people are going to watch no matter what, than they would allow a new creative with fresh ideas to give the MCU the shot of life that it desperately needs. The only issue with that thinking is that they didn't foresee general audiences catching on and getting tired of their bullshit. Back in June of 2022, sources told Deadline's Justin Kroll that, quote, after not having to worry about watching over Multiverse of Madness every moment of production, due to Sam Raimi's involvement, Feige is, quote, very game to the same outcome and approach with the upcoming Fantastic Four shoot. Now there's two things I need to address here. If this rumor is true, it pretty much all but confirms that Kevin Feige has been micromanaging most of the MCU projects.
Man, I'm tired of being right.
And I would say that could be a big reason for a lot of the problems contained within those projects. Any writer or director is going to have a hard time executing a unique creative vision with execs on set constantly overseeing what they're doing. And not just that, but just the fact that Kevin Feige felt the need to oversee production on these projects also kind of confirms a lack of confidence in the people that he hired, which lends itself to the idea of Marvel Studios being a bit dysfunctional right now.
Well, then get your shit together.
Also, I'm one of the few people who recognize that Multiverse of Madness was not 100% Sam Raimi's vision. There were flashes of Sam Raimi in that movie for sure, but a lot of it felt like the typical Marvel formula with some Sam Raimi-esque scenes sprinkled throughout. In fact, I'm of the opinion that Sam Raimi was hired by Marvel, so publicly it would look like they are open to the idea of handing the reins over to talented filmmakers, when so many people around that time were calling them out for not doing just that.
Because it's all part of the plan.
And a lot of people fell for that and felt like Multiverse of Madness was fresh and different from all the other MCU projects. And I would agree that yes, 3 scenes or so did feel a bit different. Unfortunately, those 3 scenes were surrounded by typical MCU mediocrity. So the bottom line to all this is that I don't really believe that Kevin Feige truly wants established filmmakers behind the camera, because they already had one in Sam Raimi, and like everyone else that has ever worked with them who has any level of talent, Marvel Studios found a way to underutilize that talent.
You're pathetically predictable.
And I don't buy into this because even if they do choose to hire more people like Sam Raimi, in my mind the outcome will still be the same because it was with Multiverse of Madness. I don't believe that they will ever allow anyone to have complete creative freedom on a filmmaking level. It's just not in their DNA. They will meddle with the vision, they will order reshoots to add cringe comedy, and they will request that everything fits perfectly into their plans. And I'm sorry, you're just not going to get quality films operating in that way. Changes need to happen at the top before we see progress in the final product. And I just don't believe that Disney, Kevin Feige, or Marvel Studios will ever allow those changes to happen.
Y'all be cool. Shut up.